This is a roof that probably less than 1% of carpenters could cut on the ground, put it up, and expect it to fit. But if you could build a roof like this, you could make more money. This is me in the 80s in Las Vegas, and I was a fully qualified carpenter, but I wouldn't have had a chance of being able to cut a roof like this on the ground, throw the pieces up in the air and expect them to fit. But boy, did I want to. This is Will Holliday. He wrote these books, among others. And I'm going to share with you some of what these books hold that are actually secrets. At least they were secret to me. And they are secrets that if and once you know them, a whole world of opportunity is going to open up for you in your life as a carpenter. So I've been in the trades for 50 years, most of the time carpentering. And in Las Vegas, once I jumped out of the union, was that dumb? Separate conversation, and started pieceworking. I met John Urban and we connected and we did stack and stairs and layout. And man, we were a team. One superintendent described us as the premier stacking team in Las Vegas. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. He taught me a lot. And one day we rolled up onto Spanish trails to stack some condominiums for Gary Day Framing, I think, Gary Day Construction. And I was surprised and energized to see piles of 2x12 pieces cut into ridges, hips, valleys, commons, jacks, all of it, cut and banded and labeled. One of the first things I noticed once we started putting them together and everything fit was that Richard had cut matching 45s on the hips, matching 45s on the jacks, from each side. It wasn't just a cheek cut all the way across the board, it was a cheek cut from each side so that he didn't have to specify left or right. And the stacker didn't have to specify left or right. That particular jack number would go on either the left or the right side of the hip or the valley. I thought, that's smart. How did Richard learn to do this? So the first thing you need to know before you spend $40 on this book and $22 on this book is that Will Holliday talks like a framer. And if Shakespeare's right and brevity is a soul of wit, then Will Holliday is one smart framer. And he doesn't waste any words and he speaks our language. I laughed out loud when I got to page 38. He's got a drawing here of plumbing up a bay window, which if you've ever done it, you know is a trick, because you've got these 3 walls. And every place, actually you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 walls. And they've got to plumb up. And if you get it wrong, buddy, you and everybody else is going to fight it. So he's got this little drawing. And it shows a plywood top. And it shows a corner pattern can also be used, all right? But here's how he describes what you do. To plumb a bay window section, pre-cut a plywood top with the exact side angles as on the floor. Rack the bay around until it matches and nail off the braces. Rack the bay around until it matches and nail off the braces. I thought, anybody who writes like that, which describes perfectly what a man on the ground would do, is somebody that I can learn from, even the tricky stuff. Now, if I've established well enough for you to believe me that he speaks with authority and he speaks our language, then don't make the mistake of not reading the preface, the acknowledgments, and about the author, and then look over the table of contents. Before you flip to the back to see if you can wrap your head around it, read what he has to say about why he wrote what he had to write. It's important, and let it inspire you. Okay, we're going to talk about being inspired by this again. But not only does he tell you how to build things, he shows you how to make jigs and some homemade tools. Now, since 1989, when he published this, a lot of these jigs and homemade tools have been mass-produced. People copied them. But if you don't have one, like on page 12, he shows some little layout, making a quick layout stick for laying out studs. Now, you can buy those now for whatever they are, 30 or 40 bucks, but you can build one. And he was building these things before anybody thought about making them. He also makes a corner marking tool, which is the same story. You can buy aluminum corner marking tools, or you can build them. What does that tell you about the guy who was thinking of these things, making them and using them before the rest of the world figured they couldn't work without him? It makes him an authority, and it makes this book a treasure trove of unexpected information. Now, not only that, but on page 43, there are nail tricks in here. I've tried to show you on these videos before about using a backing nail when you're toenailing a block so it doesn't slide sideways, about driving and bending a 16 penny at the top of a joist to hold it flush with the top, or to hang a block from a nail in the wall. Those are Larry Hahn tricks. He has them beautifully illustrated and described. Yeah, we're back to the deal that you're going to learn more with this book than you thought you were going to learn. And if you're starting out, he recommends an introductory book by another author. You'll see that. But he also covers the basics. So just because you do not feel like you're a 90%er and you want to advance to the top 2%, there's a ton of information in here that if you didn't have it, it'll be reinforced for you and be a place that you can send. Maybe you've got a cub, maybe you've got an apprentice, and you've got this book at home and he's just not getting it. Say, look, get over here. Look at that. This is a tool for foremen as well. So one of the examples of the size of Will's brain is that he can write a book that will start you out at just above ground zero and then take you right to the zenith in an orderly and coherent fashion. For instance, first third of the book, he realizes that you may not know how to rack up a bunch of boards in order to cut common rafters with exposed birds' mouths, which means they have to be tight. So he's got this beautiful little drawing of how to make a safe, fast, inexpensive sawhorse on site from material that you will have, how to rack up, make safe, make stable, and guide your cuts on some common rafters. Now, a lot of guys just don't know how to do that. And if you don't, well, the guys who do are going to lap you. So there's a tendency to think that the way we do it today is the best and only way, and that old school is old school, and you disregard. I mean, if it's not cordless, if it's not, you know, that trap. Well, let me tell you what. This was published in 1989, so it is not quite old school, well, at least to me. Maybe it is to you. But old school combined with new school is best school. Will wrote this before nail guns even showed up. He's driven, he has calculated, Will, what was the number? 10 million nails? And his elbows are shot? The point is, if you know the ways that it can be done by hand, then when you add the bonus of Simpson hangers everywhere and the nail guns and the cordless and all these things, it just puts you light years ahead. It's knowing the why. Now, Will says almost nothing in here that I found about using sawzalls. They were not ubiquitous. But he talks about finishing cuts where your skill saw won't reach all the way. By the way, skill saw tricks are in here. A freehand cheek cut to get maximum depth when you can't tip your saw down past a 45 and then finish it up with a handsaw. He extols the virtue of a sharp handsaw, and none of us should overlook the virtues of a sharp handsaw. You might find, after you read this book and decide to give it a try, that a handsaw hanging on a nail on the ridge is a handier tool than having to climb down and bring up a sawzall, even if it is cordless. But point is, some of what is in here is old school. He's got on page 42 some tricks about building soffits that don't quite exploit everything that guys do now with plywood for soffits instead of blocking for soffits. He has in here on page, don't have it in front of me. Oh, right there. Taking out the ups and downs of maybe a stem wall that's not flat. You know, we run into that, right? The concrete contractor didn't get the stem wall flat, and so our wall's doing this. He's got some good comments about shimming to get the crown plate flat. Or he said, power plane or saw off the excess. Well, maybe you've learned that you can reach in there with a sawzall and clip off the nails and everything to take a 1/4 of an inch off a stud and have it pop down. So I don't want you to think that the fact that Will was coming out of the 70s and 80s means he was doing everything that we can do today, but everything that he did and that he wrote is so useful. And he would tell you, if you find a better way, don't hesitate. So as an example of how succinct and how intuitive his descriptions are and how fast his descriptions are, he's got on chapter 7, page 129, some comments and some drawings and some instructions about eaves and plywood and fascia board. And he points out the beauty of snapping your layout lines for your hips and your valleys on the floor, inside on the subfloor. And what that does is it gives you, in figure, what is this? 7-3, he shows you how to use the floor snap line and your unit of rise. In this case, all the roofs in here are assumed to be a 6/12 pitch. to get the side cuts, the fascia, hip and valley miter cuts onto the fascia boards understood on the floor before you ever climb up there. Now that's a good trick. Now that probably only worked in California where it's dry. Now in Oregon or in Wyoming where you're apt to get snow or rain and wash your chalk lines off, Will, how did you deal with that? I don't know, maybe you snapped it in black, I don't know. But if you can control the weather, if you can keep your subfloor dry enough to snap everything out full size, he describes exactly how to transfer that information from the floor into the air. Man, I wish I would have known that earlier. So you might move the children away from the computer right now for just a second because I'm going to talk about a dogleg bastard broken hip. I hadn't even heard that term until Barry Mussel was here a year ago. And then he showed me and we talked about it and I thought, yeah, okay, I've done things like that. I had no idea what they were called and I just faked it in. I could never have cut it on the ground. Will has got an explanatory drawing, blueprint type drawing, with the dimensions and the equations and what goes where and why it's called such a thing. He's got a picture of a 22.5 degree dogleg bastard valley with square cut jack rafters. But here's a piece of gold right down here at the bottom of figure 8.7. He points you to Appendix B, where the construction master calculator moves are shown so that you can enter. A dogleg bastard broken hip is a segment from the line which bisects the acute angle between two diverging rafter walls. He tells you what you need to know to get the information out of your calculator. For $40 you can get this book. Don't sprain your wrist reaching for your wallet, but you gotta have it. So before I jump over and talk for just a few minutes about the workbook, the complicated roof, and a cut and stack workbook, like peas and carrots, at the end of this book, that little bit is its own gold mine. It's appendices. Appendix A, which are reference charts, all kinds of reference charts. You haven't memorized, have you, yet, roof pitch in their degree equivalents? Now maybe you know that 412 is 18.5, but there it is if you haven't got them memorized. And the roof rise ratios and regular hip valley backing angles, you got the backing angles right there. Side and bevel cuts on hip valley rafter tails with square hung fascia. Now yes, you can derive that from any number of other sources, but I'm sold on having them in these appendices. Applying the construction master calculator, Appendix B, how to enter, how to ask your construction master the questions to get the answers you got to have. Solid gold. Tool resources where you can go to buy the tools you need. List of figures and photos where you can go in the book to find the figures that describe what it is you're worrying about so you're not just flipping back and forth. Man, that's like a concordance, right? An index, sort of a glossary, but it's not a glossary, it's an index of where he mentions anchor bolts and backing and balloon framing and barge fascia and barrel vault ceilings and bastard hips and valleys. By the way, let me just share with you one of the biggest mistakes I made in my construction career, and it was to not get acquainted with the construction master calculator. I was vain about the fact that I could do these things on a scientific calculator. How silly was that? It was like insisting I wouldn't have needed a nail gun, or insisting that cordless technology wasn't, okay, all right, you get me there. But it was just dumb. It was pride and arrogance and vanity limiting me. I even won a construction master calculator from a giveaway that Garrison's Building Supply gave. I won one. I had it in my hand in the box. I turned up my nose and I gave it to a mason friend of mine who said, man, I've always wanted, here you go, Barry. So the lesson in that for me was, now that I see that the best of the best who could do all of it in any way that he needed to do it, saw the wisdom and utility of doing it in the fastest way with a construction master, and then he included instructions on how to do that in the back of his book. So, now, shortening up, because you've been here a long time, I wish we could all meet Will Holliday. He used to travel around and do seminars for the Journal of Light Construction. He would go to the East Coast and do seminars. He was a framing consultant. People would hire him all over to come in. They would get a complex set of plans. He would come in and work with their crews to make the magic happen. Who else has a career like that? And he flew airplanes in the Alaska bush. He's a pilot. And he's a whitewater river guide. And now he's a broken down old man. But the complicated roof, there are two roofs here. And I spent a while trying to make this finished roof drawing match. They're two different roofs. And in the back of this book, he has what he calls cut-out roof copies. He's got different segments, phase 1, phase 2 of the big bad roof, and then he has all on one page, I think, a cut-out roof copy of the smaller, more approachable roof, however that works. Don't cut these out. He says you cut them out and it saves flipping back and forth. Yes, take these to a copy shop, get these copied and blow them up so they're big enough that you can put them on your desk and, cut out copies to apply all of these specific instances, all of the figures, all of the calculations, all of the how-tos, some of the tricks, some of the definitions, and then you can go back to this book to get a more in-depth description of any of these specific aspects. This is a workbook. Don't make this mistake of jumping in. Read what he says, the book guidelines, the preface. It'll give you his philosophy of why he did what he did and why he uses the language he uses. And to that point, and remember, if I haven't mentioned it already, this is available in metric. This is only available in imperial. Guess which one I like. I want to read you just a little clip out of one of the latest emails that we've exchanged. This is Will Holliday speaking. My main emphasis in Roof Cutter Secrets was to bring tracked roof production techniques into everyday roof framing, and also share my simple KISS, keep it simple stupid, system of how to handle the more complicated stuff. Parentheses, snapped out, full size, plan view on the floor to get run and travel distances, as well as any special cheek cut angles, etc. And that ought to set off flags and alarms in your head saying, yes, that is smart. This book was actually a contrarian slap at all the roof math wizards. That should help you relax. He's not exercising math because he loves to exercise math. He's showing you the math you've got to have to do this in the quickest possible way. A contrarian slap. I feel that after all these years, that mission has been accomplished because for the most part, I find nearly all of today's framers applying RCS principles, whether they know where they originally came from or not. Hard to believe this book has been a mainstay roof framing resource for 37 years and is still as relevant today as it was back in 1988. The Lord has had His hand in it from the start, as I shared in my book, From the Top Plates Up. I summarized my roof framing philosophy to anyone who might have been interested in the preface of Roof Cutter's Secrets. If you're interested in a contrarian slap to the math wizards, but if you're interested in using your mathematic facility to become exemplary, these are the way. I can tell you this, if I would have had these books when I was in my 20s in Las Vegas, it would probably have altered my career path. These books are the travel guide to the road not taken. Thank you for watching Essential Craftsman, and keep up the good work.